Yeah, I was down in Arizona one time to visit a friend, and I haven't spent a lot of time in the Southwest. And I was going to go on a hike because I hike a lot here. And I had a 40-ounce water bottle with me, and I started walking. And I think 10 minutes into my walk, I had drank all the water. And
Yes.
I just had this headline running through my head, like tragic death of Alaska woman who overheated in the desert. And I turned around and went back.
Welcome to The Art Box, your podcast dedicated to exploring the vibrant art scene in Nevada and beyond. Join us as we embark on a journey through galleries, theaters, studios, public lands, and streetscapes, meeting the artists, curators, archaeologists, nature lovers, and cultural influencers who shape our creative community and our world. Whether you're looking for your next cultural adventure, seeking inspiration for your own artistic pursuits, or simply curious about the world of art, tune into The Art Box. Together, let's open up a world of creativity and imagination. Let's dive in.
Dreams, what if the night is about you and me? So lift your head up to the sky.
Steve, you were on a trip recently and you met Nicole.
I met Nicole.
Let's talk about that. How'd you guys meet?
She was the captain of the boat that we were on, and I got to see her. She was always busy. I wanted to say, hi, can we get you on a podcast? But she was always really busy up
And
there.
this was where? Where's up there?
Seward. Nicole, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have been a boat captain for 25 years now. So I'm 44. I started when I was 19, and I grew up on boats my whole life in Michigan and the Great Lakes. And then when I was between high school and college, I took a year and sailed with my dad from Michigan down to the Caribbean, Cuba, and Dominican Republic, and then back up the East Coast through the Hudson River and the Erie Canal. And then I started college and thought that I would just work in, a normal office job. And when I graduated college from University of Michigan, I had a few office jobs but didn't love it. And so I just started driving boats all around the world, and I ended up in the Caribbean again, and the East Coast, and the South Pacific, and Mexico, and California, and Canada, and Hawaii, and then finally Alaska. And so I'm up here driving tour boats for Major Marine Tours. This is my 15th year working for them.
How big of boats do you drive? What's the capacity?
The boats range in size. We have 9 boats for our company right now, which is great because it's a small family-owned company. It's a very local company. The owner lives here in Seward, and when we started, there were 3, and now there's 9, and I think we're going to build another one too. But the one that I drove this summer that Steve was on, the capacity on that one is 150 people, and it's about 100 feet long.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
It is impressive. It's beautiful, too.
How do you get licensed for that? What's the training?
To get your captain's license, you have to have 720 days at sea. And then you take a bunch of Coast Guard exams. They run your background check. And once you pass all those exams, you have all that training under your belt, then you get your license. But every 5 years, you have to have another 365 days at sea, or you have to retake all those tests. So I think I'm on my 5th issue of my license. So yeah, I only had to take the test one time, fortunately, but I studied on my own. I never took a class. A lot of people take classes to get their captain's license, but I grew up on boats my whole life. And then I just read 1,000-page marine books from cover to cover. And when I was 19, I just went into the Coast Guard exam and took that test and passed. And it's what I've been doing ever since.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks.
So about your trip to the Caribbean, do you have any scary stories on that trip?
Oh, sure. I mean, this was 1998, so it was before we really had email, or we definitely didn't have cell phones back then. And so it was just myself and my dad, and I was 18 and my dad was 49. And 18-year-old daughters with their dads isn't always a good time, but we got to live on a 45-foot sailboat together for a whole year and got a lot of great experiences. I think some of the scarier ones were when we were off the coast of Cuba and we were in 30-foot seas, and we would be in our little boat looking up at this mountain of water, and we'd slowly climb it like a roller coaster, and then we'd get to the top and look down, and the whole boat would pitch straight down, and it would be cruising faster than the engines would allow. It was just gravity pulling us down, and then our nose would get buried and the boat would pop back up, and then all the water would come down on us, and we were tethered to the boat. And that was probably the scariest moment. That's when I decided to go to college, because I thought there's no way that college is harder than this. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but I think those make you, I mean, those are the stories you need to be a boat captain. You need to go through stuff like that. Yeah.
I knew there'd be a scary story in there somewhere.
So many. I think the only other strange one is that when you're at sea for many days at a time, you start to hallucinate. This sounds strange, but you're driving the boat for 4 hours and then sleeping for 4 hours and driving for 4 hours and sleeping for 4 hours, and you're switching with the other person you're on the boat with, and it's just nonstop for 7, 10, 15 days, however long the passage is. And one of the passages from the Bahamas to the East Coast, my dad and I were doing those shifts, finally getting back to the East Coast, trying to go around Cape Hatteras in North Carolina. And we got caught out in the Gulf Stream in a north wind. So you have a current coming a different direction than the wind, and the waves got huge. And we would just feel our boat in the middle of the night going straight up and then just dropping like a ride at a carnival, not even riding a wave, just straight drop, not knowing when it's going to hit. And I went downstairs because I thought I heard Beethoven playing, because we like to listen to classical music when we were on the boat. And I just kept hearing the song over and over in my head. And I went down to turn it off, and it was never on. So just auditory hallucinations. And it's just being at sea was a challenge, but I'm glad I did it. It's a great set of memories for my dad and I.
Oh, I bet.
Wow.
I'm thinking about this 4 hours on, 4 hours off. That doesn't even sound healthy. How did they come up with that?
You know, it's because I think if you get 4 hours off to sleep, you know, we sleep, I think I've heard this before, in 3 hour increments really well, where you can actually get into REM. And so, and also it's just, when you're doing that for days and days and days, it's really hard to stay awake for more than 4 hours at a time. So it just feels like the Twilight Zone. You have no idea what day it is.
Addie breaking in here to add my 2 cents on 4-hour sailboat shifts. Not sure if Linda and Steve know, but I am quite often on my sailboat off the coast of Brisbane sailing the Coral Sea. When it comes to sleep, particularly REM, rapid eye movement, sleep, the body's restorative processes play a crucial role in overall health. In a typical sleep cycle, a person goes through various stages, including light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep, with the complete cycle lasting around 90 minutes. REM sleep is particularly important for cognitive functions, memory consolidation, and emotional regulation. In summary, while 4-hour on and off shifts on a sailboat are manageable, they present challenges to achieving adequate REM sleep. By implementing strategies like napping, optimizing sleep environments, and occasionally rotating shifts, it's possible to mitigate some of the negative impacts on health and maintain a higher level of alertness and cognitive function during these demanding conditions. I am sure enjoying this interview with Captain Nicole. Addie, over and out.
Yeah, it was a great learning experience at 18. I'm glad that's not what I'm doing now. So I get to go home every night now, and I get to look at whales, and it's much easier. And if it's a really rough seas, then obviously I don't take people in them because we have 150 passengers on board now. But in those days, we also didn't have great weather forecasting, and my dad was a little bit... Have you seen the movie Captain Ron?
Yes.
Okay, Kurt Russell plays a character with an eye patch and long hair and an earring, and he does everything wrong. And that's my dad. I feel like they based that character on my dad. So I learned everything that I know from him, and I also learned everything not to do from him as well.
I have a new movie to watch.
Oh, you haven't watched Captain Ron?
Oh, I haven't.
Oh, yeah, because in my mind, or I came into this that her father looked like Kurt Russell with an eye patch.
You did?
Yes.
Yeah, he does.
So any Captain Ron stories?
Oh, gosh. I mean, my dad.
Could you trust him during his 4 hours?
No, you could not.
So you had to
I
sleep
would-
with one eye open? And Beethoven
Anytime
playing?
I would wake up in my middle of my thing and just go check on my dad, and we'd be on the east coast of the U.S., tons of commercial vessels, shipping lanes,
Oh.
and my dad would be asleep on the couch during his shift. So I am very awake on my shifts, and I really don't trust other people to stay awake on theirs. But yeah, we made it somehow. So
Tell us about what you do now. Do you decide
Yeah.
where your boat goes, or is that decided for you by the company? And do you change course in the middle of a plan? Tell us how that all
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, that's a great question, Linda. I think what's really great about the job is that it is different every day, and that driving a tour boat to find wildlife and a glacier, we as captains get to choose where we're going to go. Obviously, our goal is to end at the glacier, so we're typically following a similar path every day. But when you think about wildlife, any quarter mile difference that you choose to go out on the ocean could lead you to something completely different for the day. So it does feel like it's a day of possibilities when I get on the boat in the morning. For me, that's really exciting because I know this area, and I know that more often than not, it's overwhelming how much we see in a day. And so I think that's really exciting, walking down the dock in the morning. Sometimes it's really foggy here, and I know that all these people from sunny places are going to get on my boat and be really upset that it's raining and that it's foggy, and they're going to think that they're not going to see anything. And those are my favorite days, when it's really bad in the morning, because I just know that we're going to blow their minds with how much we see. So yeah, it's fun to make it different every day, according to the weather and the waves and, what's out there.
What is the favorite thing to share with your passengers?
Yeah, I think that honestly, I know everybody comes up here to see wildlife, and I love the wildlife, but the glacier for me is the most exciting thing to share. It's just such a reflection of this moment in time that we're in right now, that these are tidewater glaciers. I mean, thousands of years ago, this area was completely covered in ice, a huge glacier that went 3,000 feet above us, 1,000 feet beneath us. It stretched 60 miles out to sea, and all of that melted, and then this area flooded with seawater, and that's how we have these fjord systems. So the glaciers that we're looking at are remnants of that still exist, and they won't exist forever. They're constantly receding, moving backwards, and they're thinning. They're becoming less massive. So even if they appear to us to still be in the same spot, they're actually becoming thinner and less massive and shrinking. And so to sit in front of this giant mass of blue ice, I mean, just yesterday, I was out there in awe. And then you have all these icebergs floating in front of it too, with harbor seals on top, hundreds of harbor seals as far as your eye can see, little sea otters floating in the icebergs. And I also think that we don't take a lot of time to be silent these days. There's so much input from so many different sources. And so when people get to the glacier at first, they're really excited and they're chatting and they're taking photos. And then because we stay for 20 minutes, at about the 10-minute mark, I notice that if it's calving and making noises, people start to tune in and they stop talking and the boat is quiet. And you're just watching nature in a way that we don't really get to do very often, taking that moment to be silent and appreciate it. And I think that's really my favorite moment. Yeah, I call her the big blue beauty, Ayala Glacier, because she's just huge. I mean, the face of it is 1,000 feet high. And yesterday it was calving like crazy. We had ice crashing down from 800 feet high and creating tsunamis of ice that came at us. We had to turn the boat out of the way. And
Oh, did you
It's just
really? Cool.
yeah, it's just the power of nature, I think, that is really incredible. And the other thing is seeing bubble nutting humpback whales. So seeing any whales is amazing, but to see whales cooperatively feeding, there were 15 of them this summer that were doing it for a few short weeks. And they sing a song underwater. We stick a microphone underwater and you can hear them singing. And one of the whales is swimming in a circle blowing bubbles, and those bubbles are rising to the surface in the shape of a big, big circle, probably 30 feet across. And then the other humpback whales work with each other, and they all come up fin to fin, straight up from the bottom, up with their mouths open, taking in all the fish that are trapped inside that net of bubbles, and it's called bubble netting. And to see it is amazing. And then when we put the audio on the boat and people can actually hear what's happening underwater, I see people crying every time. So it's pretty beautiful.
Well, when we were there a couple weeks ago, you got us like right there. And it's the closest I've been to bubble feeding. It was amazing. And I got some really good pictures. I wonder, do they ever, because the birds, you can tell by the birds, the gulls, do they ever eat a bird?
I'm sure they do, because the birds are, as soon as the whales come up with their mouths open, you know, you've seen it, so you can imagine it. But these gulls, these glaucous-winged gulls, are dive bombing the whales' mouths and literally picking fish out of the whales' mouths, because they're all eating the same size fish that are no bigger than your finger. And I am sure that a whale has closed its mouth around a seagull once or twice.
Yeah, because
some of
the pictures I took, people are like, were they eating the birds?
I don't think they're intending to, because they only have a throat the size of a grapefruit, so I don't think they're going to swallow a seagull. But I'm sure some seagulls have survived being in the mouth of a whale. Yeah, and you hear that low moaning sound, and it's this beautiful song. And I think it just reminds us that there's so much about the world that we don't understand, and that has existed for so long. It's just, I think it's a really powerful moment for a lot of people.
Now, I know you talked about photographers, and you're trying to get people into the right light. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because you must must do some photography too, to know about that.
No, I wish I did. I always joke that I go out there and I see amazing things on a daily basis, and I have 0 photos to prove it, because the whole time I'm on the boat, I'm so concerned about making sure that everybody can see. You know, we have 150 people, and our boats are designed with a stadium standing in the front that you experienced, which is really great, because then everybody can see over each other's heads. But still, I know some people are going to not get out of their seats for one reason or another. I know we also have people who are restricted in ability to maneuver, which is a boat term, but I use it for people. You know, there's people in wheelchairs, and they can't get outside very easily. And usually they're on the starboard side of my boat, the right side of my boat. And then you've got people with giant lenses trying to take photos. And, you know, they're trying to do that with 150 people around them. And so it's a lot to think about. On top of that, you have the seas, and you're trying to make sure the boat is somewhat stable, so all these people who have both hands on their phone or their camera aren't falling against each other. So it's a lot of coordinating, but when I see somebody with a good camera on the boat specifically, I do try to be really mindful of positioning the boat so that they have a better background and better lighting, because looking into the light when you're trying to get a good photo doesn't really work very well. And so I'll try to move the boat around for them and tell them where to stand on the boat, because there's certain places that are just easier for photographers, where there's less people in your way, but you still can get from side to side real fast if an animal moves. So it's just, you want people to go home with the best memory possible. And I know this is a once in a lifetime trip for so many people, and especially these photographers. You know, they're probably not booking multiple whale watching tours, though they should, because you see something different every day. And it's really fun when they get off the boat with a great photo that they're going to remember that moment forever.
Is there competition between the vendors and even the captains?
No, no. It's great. There are probably at least 20 different whale watching companies here. And Major Marine Tours, who I work for, and Kenai Fjords Tours are the 2 largest. So we're the ones who send out about 9 boats a day. And we all communicate all day long about what we're seeing. We share information about where we're at, what's happening. And I think it works out better for everybody that way, because if I find a humpback whale and I'm all excited about it, and I only tell the people that work for my company we're going to lose it because we all leave at different times. And so if I leave that whale and 20 minutes has gone by, the chances of somebody else finding that whale are pretty slim because they move around so much. But because there's so many boats out there, when we all coordinate it, it's kind of like a conga line. But we try to be really mindful of not all going to the same whale, not all going to the same whale at the same time. You know, we don't want to stress out the animals. We try to be really respectful. And so, for instance, yesterday, I showed up at this transient killer whale, which is a mammal-eating killer whale. And it was just one. And 3 boats had been on it an hour ago when they found it. And then 6 boats were on it. And then I came in and we got some really great video and views of it breaching and rubbing its belly on the rocks. It was really cool. And then the other boats left, but 4 more boats came in. And so I left. You know, we try to be mindful of creating space around the animal so that it doesn't get stressed out. So yeah, it's great to share. Sharing is caring out there.
With the orcas, there's mammal eating and there's not. Do you want to explain the differences between the two?
There's 3 kinds up here. There are the mammal eating variety, which have been historically called transient killer whales. And they'll specialize in eating marine mammals. Some specialize in eating, up here anyway, harbor seals. Some specialize in eating stellar sea lions, which are significantly larger. They all have different specialties, and it's a matriarchal society. So the grandmothers are the ones who teach the offspring how to hunt these marine mammals. And then you have the fish-eating variety of killer whales that are called historically resident killer whales. But I hate using that term because people think, oh, they're residents, they live here. No, they travel thousands of miles. And then the third type of killer whale that we really do not see very often, I only saw one time this summer, they are shark-eating killer whales. We have these sleeper sharks, kind of like nurse sharks, at the bottom of the ocean here. And these offshore killer whales, there's very little research about them because they live so far offshore. That's how they got their name. And they'll come into our bay once a season and just decimate the shark population. And they're trying to just eat the livers. And you'll see body parts of sharks floating to the surface. And you'll just see offshore killer whales stretched as far as your eye can see. They come in, they eat all the sharks, and then they leave, and they don't come back for a year. So 3 genetically distinct varieties of killer whales. They are shaped a little different. They don't mate across lines. You know, residents only mate with other resident pods. So yeah, they're really intelligent animals, but it is kind of interesting because when we see killer whales, everyone's like, killer whale, and I try to explain the 3 types, but I think everyone's just so excited to see a dorsal fin, they forget what I'm saying.
I saw once, a long time ago, a documentary where the killer whales drowned a baby humpback and ate that. Would that be your transient?
Yes. Yep. That would be a transient. And not very many transient killer whale pods specialize in hunting humpbacks. I mean, that is how killer whales got their name, not because they're whales, because they're not, they're dolphins. But because fishermen back in the old days used to see them killing humpback whales.
Okay.
I'm in awe out there every day, but I will say that yesterday was my last day driving tours for this season. I'm also pretty sad because to go out there every day and see the things we see every day, you feel that sense of awe. And I think that's what I'm referring to when I say people are crying at the bubble netting humpback whales. It's this sense that connects us to the world in a bigger way. And that's what I get from being out there. So I'll just keep doing it forever if I can.
Yeah, my son was telling me today, he texted me today, that the tour boats are winding down.
Yeah.
So do the boats go anyplace else?
No, the boats mostly stay here. So we start cutting down on trips. And we send less boats out around this time of year, but we will run until October 15th. And At that point, it's mostly Alaskans who just want to get out of town and come down to Seward and, go on a tour. But I always joke that in the spring and the fall when we run tours, it's going to be the big four, because in Africa they call it the big five. So here I call it the big four, and it's a sea otter, a mountain goat, a bald eagle, and a stellar sea lion. You're lucky to see those things in early spring and late fall because the whales are gone. You might see a killer whale. They don't really migrate, but you won't see a humpback whale for sure. Yeah, and so there's less boats and there's less tourists. It's when the kids go back to school, everything kind of slows down up here.
When does the season start, and what is the season for whale watching?
That's a great question, and I wish this was information that was more publicly available because I feel like the internet just tells you May through September, and it's very broad. But we start in March, the first week of March, and it's just going to be the big four for a while. And then if you're really lucky, the gray whales, they migrate up the coast of California and Canada. They pass us here in Resurrection Bay, Seward, Alaska, and they go all the way up to the Bering and the Chukchi Sea. So they have the longest migratory route of any whales. They travel 10,000 miles a year, and we'll get glimpses of them. They're not here hanging out like the humpbacks. They're just traveling through. What they do is they dive down and they stick their bottom jaw in the mud, and they make these troughs in mud, and then they close their mouth and they push out all the muddy water, and they keep all these little cephalopods, little crabs and shrimp and stuff that live in the mud, and swallow those down. And so there are certain favorite spots where they will come near us and do that to feed on their way north. And that's usually in April. Around May, the killer whales, the residents or the fish-eating variety, they come in because we have a huge run of red salmon. And from May 15th until June 15th, we have a tour called the Orca Quest. And I think it has a 90% success rate of seeing killer whales because we know that they're going to be here. And the resident pods, the fish-eating variety, are really used to all the tour boats. And they'll come swim right up to us, swim under our boat, come check us out, turn sideways, look at our passengers. They're really interactive. The transients are the mammal-eating variety. They're super stealthy, typically pretty hard to watch. So very different behaviors. And then around that time frame, the humpback whales are really starting to get here, and they're hungry. So we're seeing them feed. Then in July, I'd say if I were going to come on a tour up here, I'd probably come the first 2 weeks of June because I know that I have the highest chance of seeing a humpback whale and killer whales. And then the killer whales leave and they start going to different salmon runs in different areas of Alaska. And the humpback whales are the whale then we mostly see. And sometimes we'll even see fin whales, which are the second largest whale in the world. They're 70 feet long, whereas humpbacks are 50 feet long and orcas are about 30 feet long. And then July was a great month. We saw a ton of bubble net feeding, which was really exciting. And it was calm so that we could get to these distant places where it was occurring. And then in August, it starts to really slow down. The humpbacks are full. They start leaving us. And by September, it's, 50-50 if you're going to see a humpback whale. So it's really the height of the season, I'd say, is May, June, and July.
That's good information to know. What do you do on your off season?
Oh, that's I always joke with my passengers. Sometimes I'll allow people in the wheelhouse if we have time during the day, and they always ask, similar question. And I tell them that's my favorite time of year. I love the whales and I love driving boats, but in the winter, I am a skier. And here we don't really have a ski resort. So I climb these mountains on my skis and then I ski down, and it's called backcountry skiing. And then I have dogs that pull me on my skis around the lake and do skijoring. And all the restaurants close, all the shops close. And there's just this awesome sense of community here in Seward, Alaska in the winter. We have little coffee shops that were old churches that are really cute and adorable. And they'll do sound baths and poetry readings and cultural dinner gatherings just for fun. There's no money involved. We have all kinds of really fun local things that happen in the winter. And it's when you finally get to see your friends, because in the summer we all work at least 2 jobs trying to make money to survive the winter. So it's nice to be able to see everybody and ski and get outside. And I know it's cold here in the winter, and I made the comment that I don't know how you guys do it down there in the summertime when it's 122 degrees. And it does get to -20 here in the winter, but you just put on more clothes. So I feel like it's a little bit better than the heat.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I was wondering about that. And I also know you sell real estate, don't you?
I do, yeah. I'm in my real estate office today, actually. So I'm back at the desk job for the winter.
Seward sounds like quite an artsy community.
Oh, Linda, it is such an artsy community. My best friend, Marcel, she is actually a boat captain for Major Marine Tours as well. And she is an amazing artist. She paints on nautical charts. So she has paintings of, breaching orcas, breaching humpbacks, octopus, giant Pacific octopus, and they're all on nautical charts in the area where you would see that animal. And so she does that and also drives boats because it's hard to make a living, I think, just as an artist. And then there's so many other people here who draw and paint. And we have First Fridays in the summer, which I think a lot of communities have these days. And you feature a lot of local artists at many of the local shops around here. Susan Swiderski is an incredible painter who's down here. I mean, there are so many creative people. And I think that this lifestyle, this seasonal lifestyle, really works well for that. So for Marcel, for instance, she works 7 months driving boats, and then she has 4 months to paint. And that it just works out really well for people who are creative to live in an environment like this and have 4 months off.
I totally get that. When I'm painting, I don't want to do anything else. In fact, I was almost late today. I told Steve I had paint still out. I had to use it.
Oh, I feel bad, Linda.
That's awesome. What do you paint, Linda?
I just piddle. I paint everything. This week, believe it or not, that's kept me really busy. I painted 5 dogs in a bathtub. But you always learn. I learned about bubbles, more about bubbles and more about dogs. And
Linda's the absolute best with facial expressions, with watercolor. And with acrylic.
Oh,
thank you, Steve.
You're doing more acrylic.
I like to do portraits, honestly. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Those seem the hardest to me. I can't imagine.
I could just do like a stick figure thing, but that would be it. But yeah, she does really great. And I feel bad with this podcast because then I know it takes away from her painting.
I learned
Steve?
So much.
Are you not an artist, Steve?
I'm a photographer. I don't think that's art, but I'm a photographer.
It is art. It is art.
And he writes as well. He's published some children's books.
I do have children's books.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm arranging with, there's a pottery studio there.
Yes.
Okay, and they're going to get back with me. Because certainly one of the questions I needed to ask was, what do you do in the winter? Because I know my son and his girlfriend, they leave.
Oh,
so
yeah.
and now we know what you do, and it sounds like a nice. Because I was always going. You said the coffee shop. There was a coffee shop by where we stayed, and I went there every morning, and it was so nice. They had some art in there.
Was it Res Art? Do you remember?
Yes, that was it.
That's the one. Yeah, there's a lot of community events there. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cute.
I have a quick question because I'm still visualizing the lady that paints on the navigational charts, which I'm sure that is just amazing. Does she use watercolor or acrylic? Do you know?
Yeah. So Marcel, she, for her art, she'll sometimes incorporate both. She's a really great watercolor artist and acrylic. So sometimes she'll thin down the acrylic to get it on the chart because for some of the animals, she likes you to be able to see through.
Sure.
The animal. I think it's really challenging painting on charts, and some of them are waterproof charts, so they have a really strange texture. So yeah, it's definitely a whole different set of technique to paint on those charts.
Oh, absolutely. But I can visualize those. Those have to look fantastic.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. She sells her stuff all around town, and I think she was featured in the Alaskan magazine. So yeah, she's doing a great job, but it is hard to make a living as an artist. So driving boats and being inspired, she just painted. I don't remember, Steve, if we went to Spire Cove when you were on the boat. Do you remember Spire Cove? Yeah, one of the places, and so we don't go there all the time, but there's this cove with these spires. You're going to have to come back up and do this again if we didn't go there. And there's all these beautiful spires that come straight out of the water, and I can actually drive right through them and sit in them. And I think National Geographic ranked it one of the top 10 most photographic places in Alaska. We just can't always get there due to weather and timing and everything. She just recently painted one of those, which is watercolor, and she just got prints of those. And so she's inspired by what we see out there, and that's what she paints. So yeah, I think that it's a beautiful place to be inspired. And I will say that photography, in my opinion, is truly an art form, because a lot of times I feel like people who paint are inspired by photographs they see from photographers. So it's all just a circle of art and inspiration.
Anything else you want to tell us, Nicole?
I would just say that I am very grateful to be interviewed by you guys. Thank you so much for even thinking that what we do out there is an art form, because when you reached out to me about it, I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to fill out this questionnaire that asks me what my medium is. And, it was a questionnaire made for artists, and it was surprisingly simple to fill out because I love what I do, but I didn't realize, I think you're the first person who brought it to my attention that what we do out there, trying to pace the trip, trying to foreshadow events, building excitement around something that we're seeing. Like, for me, it really is an art form, but I don't think I realized that until that questionnaire and until the interview. So I just thank you for making that apparent to me. It's part of why I love the job so much.
Yeah, and it is art.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's pretty great. It's like writing a story every day. And when I get home from work, my husband always asks me, how was your day? And I recap the entire thing every day from beginning to end.
Oh, because every day's different?
Yes, because every day is different. And some days I say, well, today it started out with a bang, but then, gosh, it got a little slow towards the end. Or some days I say, oh, it was perfectly paced. And then at the very end, we had this big thing happen. And it was such a great storyline for all the people on board. For me, it's always a storyline that I'm writing by choosing where to go and listening to the radio and listening to all the other boat captains and trying to time things right so that we don't stack everything up in the beginning or the end. And just giving people time to, when they're done looking at wildlife, to look through their photos and be excited with their guests, their friends around them, and then, kind of on to the next thing. And so I really appreciate that perspective, which I don't think I had before.
Yeah, and I really, really appreciate what you do. So I take it as I found it interesting. You probably walk to work, and as you go to work, you were talking about some days when it's foggy and rainy, and other people are probably, I got to go to work now. And I get that you're actually going, I'm going to work now, yay! I'm all happy and everything. Is that right?
It's true. Yes. Yeah. I'm a little sad to be done for this season myself right now. But yes, the foggy days when I know that the things that will be revealed to our passengers are just going to be so astounding. So many people like you guys are from sunny, hot places, and the minute they see a raindrop, they get worried that they're not going to see anything. But I always have to remind people that we live in a rainforest here in Seward, Alaska, and that we have glaciers because it's so cloudy and rainy. That's the reason that they're here. And that's the reason that the whales are here, because we have, the food out there for them because of our long daylight hours. And so it's just a beautiful place where everything kind of comes together to, I think, overwhelm visitors. And I love that feeling. And I'm just glad that you got to experience that bubble net feeding, because that's a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah, it was great. Well, Linda and I can tell you that when we see a raindrop here, we do happy dances.
That's true. Yes. Perspective is everything.
Because it's monsoon season right now, and I don't think we've had a drop.
Oh my goodness. Well, I hope you guys get some rain to cool things off.
So the rain won't cool it off, but at least there'll be a little water so the plants can live. So
yeah.
Nicole, thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you guys. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much. This was really fun. I so appreciate you taking the time and for thinking of me. And I hope if you come back up here, you'll get in touch and let me know, and I can get you out on a boat. So,
Nicole, thank you so much for this morning. I just have this visual image of everything Alaska and everything you do now. It's just wonderful. It was so pleasurable to hear about your trips and what you do on your off time. Thank you again.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate getting to share with you guys. Appreciate it.
You
You
too.
too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Broadcasting from the Mesquite Works STEAM Center in the scenic Mojave Desert, the Art Box sponsors thank you for listening. You can find us on Spotify, Samsung, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, and Amazon Music. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We are on Facebook and Instagram as The Art Box. We welcome all comments. You can email us at artboxvv@gmail.com. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of its hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors.